Hello, we are back with the youHQ Wellbeing Wins webinar and podcast, and I'm very pleased to have my guest with me today, Kevin Holland from Global Spirit Ed. Kevin, how are you doing?
Really well, Jez. Really pleased to be here with you, and literally couldn't be more excited about our conversation today.
Really looking forward to speaking to you, Kevin. And look, we're looking at holistic education, and the title of this particular webinar is Beyond Academics, Linking Values, Goals and Holistic Education. Can you tell us a little bit more about you, your role at Global Spirit Ed, and your passion for the work you do, and what brought you to doing the work that you're now doing with Global Spirit Ed?
Sure can. So similar background to you, Jez, ex-PE teacher many moons ago, and saw my way into senior leadership, and then took the step out of schools into a local authority and was the local authority PE advisor, but actually did a range of things around curriculums and some head teacher appraisals as well, which was exciting to do. But then I've always worked with a view that people are absolutely fundamental to everything we do. It sounds a really strange thing to say, but I think sometimes it gets lost in some of the accountability elements, and it is really about people. So I've always done work around coaching. I'm a personal coach, and I love working with people to set goals and to hopefully achieve more than they believed in themselves initially. But through that journey, I worked with an organisation that's based in Sweden. Their young people have a coaching conversation and are really well known by all of the staff and all of the teachers in much smaller schools from a secondary perspective than we would have. And they really value the whole person. Yes, they want them to achieve the greatest grades and give them the best opportunities for their future as possible, but they want them to develop as global citizens, as people that can be really respectful and add value, I guess, into the world. So I'm really driven by that. I think it's something really important to the work we do in schools and education centrally. Personal development is part of the Ofsted framework, but I think sometimes it's almost like the forgotten part of it. And I think after COVID, and with probably some of the statistics that sit around wellbeing, it's ever more important now. So yeah, it's been a really interesting journey. I started teaching in 2000, and obviously 2024 now. Through that journey, Global Spirit Ed was born 2 years ago. With a network of schools that I guess completely align with that philosophy around coaching and developing a culture that sits around that, and the opportunity to really empower and impact young people in the broadest sense of that, and not define children by academic outcomes. And much of that's driven by my own experience, what I reflect on to be quite negative in school, and over these years I've been able to reflect on that and hopefully impact schools and young people in a way that I think works in a much more holistic way.
Interested to hear your journey through appraising head teachers. My own personal journey from PE teacher, director of sport, one of the main reasons why I left was I think I faced leadership that didn't buy into myself as an individual, and I felt very much that I was being purely judged on the academic value added. Student A should get grade X and got grade Y, and therefore why did they get that? And there was no, we hear that term holistic education. I think it's one of those buzz terms, a bit like wellbeing. We hear the words a lot. I'd really like to delve in a little bit deeper on that. And you talked about the Swedish model as well. And I'd love to hear a bit more about that. And also, do you feel like in the UK, and we can look at international as well at some point, but in the UK, do you feel like we're still really quite behind in that way? In the schools that you've been working with, do you still feel like you're having to really convince head teachers and schools and leaders that this is the way to go?
That's a really good question. It's a really broad question, actually, because there is a range of pressures that sit in and around schools today, even more so than when probably you talked about their leaving, and no different from my journey. I think the element of kind of top-down performance management, whether that and those targets aligned to Ofsted and outcomes fundamentally, and we know that shifted nationally because obviously there was that understanding that was causing a huge amount of pressure. But I think as we go through that journey, we have to give people an opportunity to own some of their own professional development and be judged on how they're holding themselves accountable for the education they're providing the young people. And I think, unfortunately, within the education sector at the moment, with issues around increasing numbers of SEND students, the needs of those students rapidly increasing, and numbers of any kind of special school or alternative provision places decreasing, alongside the funding bit. And let's not even touch the funding bit, because we can't magic up a few £1 billion. I think head teachers and leaders are finding it much harder to find the time to invest in this kind of work, which is about actually the whole person leaving their organizations as the most rounded individual, and having the broadest skill set, from being great leaders and team players, and being able to be reflective and resilient and set goals and have strategies and be solution focused, all of those things sitting alongside, hopefully, some really great academic outcomes, because obviously that's an important part of the journey. So I think there are barriers now that didn't exist previously that are different from those Ofsted accountability barriers. But I do believe, I think you're right, we use words like wellbeing and holistic quite broadly. And I think it's about creating a culture where in schools, you know, a really good friend of mine is head teacher of a school in Felton, has a culture of kindness. That's his school's motto. And I think that's fabulous, whether it be a culture of coaching or a culture of dialogue. But the person is important. Every young person needs someone advocating for them. And that's that kind of opportunity to sit down with them, find out about them. What are their ultimate goals? What do I aspire to be? An astronaut, a scientist, a YouTuber, who knows what it could be, but how do we engage with that and add value in our education system so that they feel like they can achieve that, and there's no barriers, or they have the strategies to overcome those barriers.
In the Swedish model that you mentioned, can we talk a little bit more about that? And
yeah,
I don't know what your direct experience is like, whether you've been there and seen it. Has that always been the way in Sweden? And also, you know, we talked about us being PE. Why the Scandinavian countries do things so well? I was doing a piece recently about play, and I think it's in Finland where they just play for the first 2 to 3 years of their education journey. It is literally play. It's not formal, it's not assessed, it's just go outside, play, and that's that lost art of play side of things. And you know, what is that Swedish model? How does it work in reality on the ground?
Yeah, so I think Finland's obviously a really interesting place, and Pasi Solberg is the architect of a lot of that work. With Sweden, slightly different. So it's not a Swedish model. It's actually an organisation called Kunskapsskolan, which is easier said than spelled, actually.
I'm definitely not saying that. I'm not
Absolutely.
saying that.
Kunskapsskolan is really set up to empower young people. And I was lucky enough to start to be involved in that in around 2011-12. And their model is really clear. The children aged around 10 or 11 have the conversation to set an ultimate goal, whatever that might be, what I want to do, want to be in the future. And that means that there's an opportunity to give them give them the steps that they need to achieve that ultimate goal. So if it is, let's take, you know, I want to be a brain surgeon, they need to be operating academically at a really high level from 11 to 12 to 13 to 14, all the way through. And what they do is, firstly, they have a portal that means that they can capture that journey. They use a bronze, silver and gold. If you're operating at gold, you're at the highest end, and you need to keep talking to your teachers, keep doing formative and formative assessments till at the end of the block you do a summative assessment, very similar to what we would use in the UK, I guess. But they get coached for 15-20 minutes every single week. And in that coaching conversation, it's for them to bring the agenda. Okay, so I got a silver in that and I need to get a gold. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to speak to my teacher. So they're taking ownership of achieving their ultimate goal by setting themselves weekly goals, looking at their timetable, looking at what options there are to study and to learn, and building their own strategies. But I think the key part to this is that they have that person who advocates for them, that coach, but they're owning that journey. They've chosen that ultimate goal, and they are intrinsically driven and motivated to do that. And one of the words that we use around that is agency, which is a word around actually the learner knowing how they learn best, who they learn, and who they are as a learner, and have those strategies. So it is slightly different. The children go to school when they're 7 rather than earlier, as they do here. And I think, as you said, some of that work around play and learning how to overcome different challenges, as well as fundamental skills of communication and, that, as well as hand-eye coordination skills from a PE perspective, all of those things are important. But their journey is, over time, they start to have an opportunity to take more ownership of their learning. What that means is, for those that are really driven, really focused, really good at achieving their goals, they can actually work at a faster pace. So they're not held back by the system. If I'm getting gold, and I want to go a bit faster or do another subject, they enable that to happen. Now that does, and actually they do have an opportunity to almost pick what lessons they go to achieve those goals. Now that isn't to say Kevin and Jez, there's 2 slightly annoying young boys in that year group who can't quite do that. We don't get ownership of what we're doing, but there is that opportunity. So the more we show those skills, the more we're able to define our own kind of education in many ways. So it's fabulous when you see it, when you speak to the children. It's all about being focused on their goals and understanding how to get there. So it's very, very different, really, from what we do here in the UK. But I had the pleasure of trying to implement parts of that.
It sounds like, Kevin, as well, that any cultural change is so hard. And am I right in saying then, obviously, in somewhere like Sweden, that's the system, and they've all bought into it. And I imagine the teachers are trained in that coaching style probably quite early on. Does it feel like in the UK at the moment that does it feel like we're trying to bolt something on or add something into a system where the teachers are already feeling potentially quite overwhelmed and overworked and underpaid and all the rest of it, and yet we're saying, well, actually now we're going to train you up to be a coach as well, so they've got to attend your lesson, there's pressure on you for them to achieve academically, but then we're also trying to squeeze or carve out some time for these young people, which we all know is vital. Everything, no one's going to sit there and go, oh, this isn't important work, right? Yeah. Because yes, we know young people, when we become older, we want meaning and purpose, and we should be setting goals in line with our values, and we should be really thinking about the person we want to become. But the conversations that we have, and obviously this is how we started talking in the first place, because the 2 businesses that we have are very aligned in the values and what we're trying to do. Often we get teachers saying, this is great, I love this, really love this, but I haven't got time. We haven't got the time for this. Is that the sort of conversations you have? And if that's true, how do you make the work you're doing? How do you make it work in schools with teachers that are feeling that way, basically?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to go back to where you started that, Jez, which was, is it a bolt-on or can it be a bolt-on? If it's a bolt-on, then I think all those, I call them arguments, but reasons why maybe you can't find the time to do it, I think are valid. There's so much going on in a school setting. A really important part to the work we do is to ensure that this piece of work aligns to that whole school improvement journey and is going to add value. It has to add value, has to be really clear, has to be transparent, has to be understood by everyone involved. And earlier on you talked about change, and this is a change. But if we only work with the teachers on the quality of their pedagogy and how they deliver, which is obviously completely valid, but we don't do anything with the young people and who they are and how they learn best and give them strategies, surely we're only doing 50% of what we could be doing to improve the overall outcomes. So the conversations that we would have are about making this a culture of coaching, or a central part to the whole school improvement journey, making sure it aligns directly with obviously different elements that sit within Ofsted and their own improvement journey. But in both cases, for the young people, the students, and also the professionals, the teachers, we focus on the person. So by improving the dialogue, by having some goals that are about that person and making them feel that they can start owning some of that journey, the buy-in there is actually about them. We're talking about well-being. It's no good just doing cakes on a Friday, right? That might be part of a journey, but that's not going to make a difference. If I'm operating at 3 or 4 out of 10 in my personal life, it could be, we know there's challenges, could be finances, could be a personal issue, could be anything. Then it's really hard to operate better than that as a teacher. You're going to have to work really hard, and it's going to break somewhere. No different to children. If we don't give them an opportunity to overcome some of the battles or barriers or things that they're doing, it's harder for them to learn. So that positive psychology piece, a piece around actually reflecting on you as a person and finding strategies to overcome issues, is a really good starting place. Then we move to the type of model I talked about with Sweden, having a really clear academic goal, career goal. What do I want to be, achieve in the future? And then for the staff, having a really clear professional goal that they have a bit of ownership about. So if the whole school focus is around vocabulary, that's absolutely fine. But if we were then to create a coaching structure for staff, it might be, Jez, for you, you're going to focus on your vocabulary when you're teaching gymnastics or dance, because that's not your stronger area, and you're going to really work hard about that. And for me, it might be when I teach BTEC sport, but because I did GCSE and I don't know all of the BTEC bit, I need to really focus in on how I'm going to teach that.
Listen, Kevin, I've got to pick you up because you haven't seen me teach dance. It's phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, phenomenal. I'm already looking forward to it. So just let me know when you're next in. I've tarred a lot of male PE teachers with that there, which is a bit rude. I'm really sorry. I'm sure there's lots of really great dance and gymnastics teachers out there. I don't think me or you would be willing to put ourselves.
Hey! I'm not joking. My dance, that was really. Do you know what? I remember teaching it as a young PE teacher, and I did quite enjoy it. Yeah. And we won't go down that route, but I think when the older I got, the more I didn't have to teach it, so I didn't teach it for the last few years.
You stepped away.
You stepped away from it. Let the professionals do it instead.
But what we need to be is really focus. If the point about something being a bolt-on, or the point about using words like well-being or coaching either, or holistic, is we need to know exactly what it looks like in the school. How is it going to, those 3 I's are useful. What's the intent? Well, we want to improve the journey for people. How do we implement it? Where are we finding the time? What does it look like? And in the implementation bit, the really important bit is to get the impact. We have to be quite forensic. So if I'm going to go away and work in a peer coaching situation with 2 other members of staff, it's no good us just talking about how that lesson 4 went. That's way too broad. We're not going to have a real focused conversation. If my journey over that academic year is to provide a piece of even an academic poster at the end of the year where I've gone and done some reading, done some research, practiced, had people come to just watch me those little snippets of how I'm using different strategies to improve vocabulary in my BTEC lesson. And it could be identified for that set of children, those 7 children right there that I haven't found the right strategy for. Suddenly we're really clear. We've got that focus. I have some ownership of my own professional development, but it aligns to the bigger picture. Just the same as the young people, I've got some ownership of my education. I've got the big picture, and it's now kind of up to me how I jump through those hoops. Now, there'll be some hurdles and there'll be some difficulties, but if I keep setting myself weekly and termly goals and I reflect on it, and when we have coaching conversations, I bring the agenda. As a professional, when I have my line management meeting, I bring the agenda because I'm the one being coached. Then we've empowered the whole school, the whole environment. Then it's not a bolt-on. It's central to how the school is going to develop some of those strategies, which I believe will then impact the academic outcomes anyway, as well as the quality of teaching and learning in the classroom. So if done as a bolt-on, I wouldn't advise it. It has to be part of the journey, part of the ethos, values, and the philosophy of the school.
So I'd love to hear. I love this, and if I was just thinking, if I'm a head or a Matt CEO, and I bought into this, can you give us an example of a school, a group of schools, a great success story where you went in? What did it look like initially for you guys at Global Spirit Ed, and then how does it work? Is it, like you said, a top-down approach where it feeds into the appraisals, and then tutors delivering it to the students? I'd love to know like an example of how it works well.
Yeah. So it's I'm gonna big up Shevington High School, which is up in Wigan, and they're a secondary school and have been involved with what was a network. The Global Spirit Ed has been through a few different guises. It's been a network, and we worked through Bolton University, and now we have Sunderland University as a partner, but are a standalone organisation. And their journey was to go and visit Sweden, visit some of the Kunskapsskolan schools. I'll say it for you, don't you worry, and just see what that looks like and speak to the children and see how it works. And then to come back and look at how that model could work in a UK setting, right, with all the accountability things that we've spoken about. So the first thing for them was to create, they started with the student element around coaching. And to do that, they created a curriculum that was more thematic or inquiry based, where you put subjects together, give really clear success criteria, but children have the autonomy to choose how they present their findings. To do that, to make sure they're on track, staff coach them in that session, which was, I think it was a Wednesday afternoon, so a longer session, couple of periods, and that kind of started to join that philosophy of coaching, academic journey, conversation with someone that's regularly having that conversation. So they started it with a year group, moved it into 2 and 3, and now that sits right across the school. So they have that same approach around curriculum and how that looks in Key Stage 3, and that then moves into a coaching conversation in Key Stage 4 that happens in the morning. One of the positive outcomes is that those children don't have to go to that meeting. It starts at 8:30 in the morning. They don't have to be there, but they get over 80% attendance to those coaching conversations in the morning. This is a secondary school, right? That's a fabulous. So the children, the students see the value. Staff obviously then are engaged. Now, initially, not all of the staff. It was particularly those, it lends itself to your humanities and your creative and PE as well, to create some kind of piece of learning that can do all of those things. Then they realized the power of coaching, so thought, well, we should be doing this with staff, because if we're doing this with the kids, we should really model it with the teachers. So created a professional development journey for those staff members to be really focused on their own professional development, to have some autonomy over what that looks like, and then to be challenged to present that piece of work as an academic research piece at the end of the year to help them go through any kind of pay scale. Through that, some of those teachers have got masters in education and have followed all sorts of pathways and have added huge value back into the school, because they can lead training. They can go, we tried this, it didn't work. This is what we did. It worked brilliantly with Key Stage 3. It didn't, that research element is really valuable. So we know that journey works. We've done similar things in different guises with multi-academy trusts. We've done slightly with the primary. It's very much been more around that kind of curriculum design, create that opportunity for children to be immersed in something and really get to grips and have some opportunity to own their learning. And I think it brings me always back to the people piece and the goal setting piece. So we know people set goals on New Year's Eve. I know you don't drink, Jez, because you look after your body. You're a quality runner. You wouldn't go out and have a few drinks, but we know other people do. More fool them. And they set themselves some sort of crazy New Year's Eve resolution, which is a goal that actually, if they were probably not intoxicated and were to step back and really think about that goal, it would look slightly different. So they often fail very quickly, 2 weeks in, 3 weeks in, 4 weeks in. What we need to make sure is with the children and the staff that goal is really purposeful. There's an intrinsic drive, some intrinsic motivation to why they want to achieve that, to help them keep on track, to help them not get scuppered as soon as there's a barrier there for them to go, oh, I can't do this. We have to build those skills, have those conversations. And the more we do that, I believe we have a holistic education, a holistic development of those young people and the teachers to become more reflective, more resilient, improve their well-being because they are more reflective and more resilient, see the positives, and create a much more powerful journey for them through the system. So, I might just believe in that. Hopefully it sounded like I believe in it, because literally that's what I think it should look like. And we're not very close to that.
No, and it does. And your passion for it comes through so strongly. I was just thinking, again, if a senior leader was listening or watching this, is there a sacrifice to doing this? So, of course, like what you're saying is you're embedding it within the culture of the school. And it sounds like to me, it's not a one size fits all. It doesn't have to be. Schools will come to you and Mats will come to you and say, look, here's what we believe and here's what we want to do. And then you guys at Global Spirit will listen to them and then you'll implement it the best way that works for that organization. But is there going to be a sacrifice? So yeah, you're saying, 80% of students are turning up before school starts, but do you have to lose, PE's often, talks about PE quite a lot. When I was PE director of sport, when these sorts of things came in, these sorts of approaches come in, they often look at the PEs, don't they? And they go, well, So can I give you an example? My son's just started a really great secondary school near where we live in Berkshire. And it's been really interesting for me. He's very, neurodivergent boy. We're really worried about him coping at this big state secondary school. And it is one of those schools where if you toe the line, if you turn up on time, if you get your homework in, you're good. And he's not that kid. And he's already got a few detentions and he's struggling, right? So they've said to him, okay, they do a thing with Reading Football Club. And it's really similar to what you're talking about. And I imagine there's other initiatives a bit like this, whether it's Global Spirit Ed, whether it's working with a different sort of partner, community partner. So Reading Football Club send some coaches in. And whilst football is the vehicle, and again, Kevin, you'll know all about this and using sport as a vehicle, it's about creating resilient young people and it's project-based. And it's very similar to what you're saying, but they have to pull him out of very specific lessons. So they won't pull him out of maths and English and science. They'll pull him out of PE and music, probably. And I'm just interested, does there have to be a sacrifice in the curriculum for you to go in and do this sort of work? Or is it totally bespoke and unique to the school and the Mats that you're working with and how you embed this into the culture of the school?
It's a really good question. And I think it falls into slightly different categories. So let's take a primary school example. We know that that most schools believe there's not enough time to deliver the curriculum. I think the realism is there's plenty of time. We over-deliver in certain areas and we deliver things we love doing. That's often the case. So some form of review of what the curriculum looks like is a good place to start, some kind of audit. In the primary sector, I believe through some kind of inquiry-based theme project, I don't mind what you call it, you can have lots of the really key national curriculum learning outcomes sitting in a project that really excites children. They can go off in different directions and present their findings and their learning in different ways, but you don't lose anything from those subjects. You don't need to teach them standalone. So from that perspective, I don't think you need to lose anything. And you don't need to rethink anything particularly. You just need to plan in a different way. Create that piece of curriculum time. Let's say it's Wednesday afternoon, you do a double session and you do that piece of work. So you don't lose anything. In the secondary world, as well as I do, people are very precious. We are precious of PE. Historians will be precious of their curriculum, as will RE, as will history. You get that. So there is a bit more resistance initially sometimes about using that kind of model. But it has been proven by a range of different schools that if you follow that pathway, people don't lose out. You focus on different areas at different times. You use the expertise. If it's a slightly geography heavy, let's say, project, then the geography lead takes a bit more of the planning and a bit more of the resource. And then the next time it might be much more focused. It could be arts. So the arts take more of a focus. And they just carefully scaffold their planning to make sure they tick the boxes, they tick the national curriculum agenda that they need to be able to do. If it becomes more of a bolt-on, let's say we just do a little bit of coaching in base group time or only the non-core do it, then I think there is more risk that people don't see it for the positives that it can have. And maybe there's some time lost from different elements. It could be taken from, we were talking PSHE earlier. It could be, it's likely to be the creative subjects, the PEs, etc. I don't think that's the right way to go about it. I understand why that would be people's initial thought. And part of the work we do is that we do an audit then we have a bit of a toolkit that we can work through with people to help them. And we have examples. There's not many questions schools would ask us to say, oh, how do we get over this? You know, we can't do that with year sevens. We go, we've seen that before. Here's an idea. This could work. And then we'll have some kind of report to pull that together. So I think what the concerns you raise are exactly the concerns that I would expect to hear, and I would then address around how we build it into a bigger piece. It's fine doing this in a small way with certain sets of children. It might be that there are a set of, as you say, neurospicy. I love that. I heard that on the radio the other day as well. Really, really a nice way to talk about it. That actually we're going to work on coaching and some mindset and some positive psychology and resilience with that small set of people. That's almost like a bolt-on project, because we know those children need that support and that input. But I think what we mustn't do is take children out of lessons where that might be their opportunity to show success or be more successful or something they're passionate about. And I would agree, we don't take them out of English, maths and science for very clear and good reasons. But if we use that model, that to me is as detrimental as actually starting some of those conversations. So embedding it in what we do in school, how as a young person, this will be the diet you receive at school. You will get coaching conversations from all of the staff, English, maths and science, and all of the others. You will be asked to set yourself goals at the start of the week in every base group, year 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and sixth form if you've got it. Then I believe everyone sees the value to it. But again, it's that piece around, if only the young people are doing it, then maybe the staff don't see the value. If only the staff are doing it, then maybe the children don't see the value. And it's a stakeholder engagement thing. Everyone needs to understand why we would do this. And for all of the reasons we've discussed earlier, all of the benefits that sit alongside it.
Do you at Global Spirit Ed and the team have aims of this being sort of compulsory teacher training? So we've often had conversations at youHQ where, you know, we might plug in, as you know, we've got a digital platform. Often, I want to come on to the goal setting side and the value side in a bit, but often we get staff who are picking up on students that are struggling through the wellbeing data, and they don't feel equipped through the training that they've received, from the statutory compulsory training they've received, to have these conversations. And you've talked a lot about it being around the people, and obviously if it's about the people, it's about the connections between staff, students, and key stakeholders. Is that one of the aims of Global Spirit Ed to make this? Are you looking for sort of government level change impacting what schools do, or is the aim to just work with schools and MATs that want to do this rather than trying to make it sort of a thing that everyone should be doing?
Yeah. Well, I often say, Jez, that I'm probably not going to be Prime Minister. I mean, I might give it a go one day, but it's unlikely. I would love for there to be policy change. At this moment in time, the EEF, Education Endowment Funder, are looking at the curriculum and going to do a review of what that looks like. For me, teacher training is focused on classroom practice and pedagogy, and obviously the subject knowledge that sits alongside that is secondary, and the broader picture from obviously a primary perspective. We need to upskill that. You know, they're young people. I think, you know, I don't know how old you were when you started, but we would have both been younger than we are, clearly. And, you know, there's a set of skills there around how with the social changes that are out there. We need a skill set. We need a set of teachers that can have these kinds of conversations in a really confident way, with some training that sits alongside it. And actually, you know, often in schools, the people that are the lowest paid, and I'm not going to say least skilled because that's unfair, but the lowest paid people are often the ones dealing with the most challenging children, using a skill set that maybe I didn't have as a teacher because they built those relationships. Somewhere in the teacher training, this kind of conversation, I believe, is absolutely imperative. We cannot improve the well-being of the nation, which is generally declining for a range of reasons, if teachers that are teaching our children haven't got any skill set in and around it. And that's why obviously yourself doing what you do, and some of our other partners, we work with some fabulous people around trauma-informed work, and, you know, all sorts of, it's all of those elements, I believe, should be outweighing or becoming equal to that academic drive. Yes, there is a journey there about showing you can work hard and stay on task and do things and, you know, work to your best ability. But that's one part of why children go to school, just as you said about your own child. And I'm going through that. I have a year 6 child, and I'm making that choice about the school he goes to in exactly the same way. So working with younger trainee teachers, I think, is a fabulous way to go about that. But I do believe we can impact the staff we work with in all of our schools, but we also are working with a couple of local authorities to try and build it broader and bigger than that, and work with more schools, because I do think it needs to be a part of their own toolkit, their own, how do I address this situation? Because yes, we want them to engage with children around their social and emotional kind of well-being, but actually this helps staff address their social and emotional health as well. So I think it's imperative. We know recruitment and retention in schools is literally at an all-time low, and is probably going to continue to go in the wrong direction. So again, I'm going to use that holistic word. For me, it's lots of pieces that grow the person.
Do you see, last question on this bit before I want to move on to goals with you, do you see in your experience a difference between primary and secondary? We sometimes find that primary naturally buy into holistic education, because that's in the UK, a primary school teacher, unless it's in the independent, and even independent schools, will teach everything. You have the same class teacher, and they have to deliver all the different subjects and all the different areas, get to know the kids really well. You've used the word intrinsic motivation, and that's what I want to lead into in a bit on the sort of values and goals side. And then you jump into a typical state secondary school in the UK. You see a tutor for 5 minutes, 10 minutes in the morning, and then you're off to all your different lessons. You don't necessarily know the teachers that well, and you're bouncing around all day long. And, again, I'm living it at the moment with my son who, I say, what's the name of your art teacher? I don't know. What's the name of this? There's no part, that's partly his personality, but you get the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
I think, as a former secondary school teacher, and my wife's primary, do you see a difference between the skills of a secondary school teacher in the way that we've just been talking around holistic education and development of a child, and the two different versions of primary and a secondary school teacher?
Oh, now there's a question that I'd love to answer, so I will. So as with you, secondary teacher, fundamentally over the last probably 8 years, I've done more work with the primary sector than I have the secondary. I think in the primary sector, they do a fantastic job of teaching all those subjects. I don't know how they do that for a start, because I was only just about okay at PE, let alone the others. They get to know those children in a way that is not, it's so impressive. It's not just about, it's great. It's actually, they make the structure of a primary school, the engagement they have with those children on a day-to-day basis, the time they give them, the relationships they build are not replicated in the secondary world. Now, there are some teachers in the secondary world and some aspects, maybe some of the pastoral care particularly, that do build some of those relationships. But as an example, in my first school I taught at in Hampshire, in my second year, I was deputy head of year 7, and it was a big school, so over 300 kids. Some of those children had 23 teachers over a fortnight. There is no way those teachers knew those children like the year 6 or year 5 teacher knew them. And I think what that creates is when the children leave primary school, they are absolutely ready, or a vast majority, they cannot wait for secondary school. They are full of skills. They've been ambassadors, maybe prefects, maybe head boy. Then they go into the secondary world and we pat them on the head almost, and we go, oh, you're 11, you'll be okay here, we'll look after you. We reteach them a whole heap of stuff. We reimagine what they are capable of and probably not where they should be. And then over key stage 3, we let them slowly grow. And then in key stage 4, because of the pressures around the accountability measures, it's very driven and force-fed. So they sit and listen and behave, hopefully. And then in sixth form, we wonder why they're really not autonomous or intrinsically driven or have the skill set that we want for them to be an independent learner. So I think there's such a disjoint between that relationship that primary schools build and what happens in the secondary world. It's really difficult to compare. There are plenty of secondary teachers, as you know, that will build those relationships, spend the time and do that. But actually, it's additional. It's kind of extra to do that, to be able to do that. One of the things that we did when we transported the Kunskapsskolan model into the UK, we created schools within the schools. So I was a director of education, and within that, I had half the year 7s, half the year 8s, half the year 9s, my own admin team, my own staff, that we worked together on delivering that curriculum where they could work together. And then there was another half, and then they all came together in Key Stage 4, so that we got to know the children. We got to know them really, really well, who they were. The base group coaches got to know them really well because they had them for those 3 years. So I'm definitely not going to point the finger at the teachers. I think the system does not help that journey. And again, I think there are ways around that without, as I've just given the example, you can restructure a secondary school to create an environment where the children feel known, feel safe, and can therefore actually be challenged more and probably driven to more ambitious goals as well. So again, I feel like it joins everything together, and that's fundamental to the work we did.
Great answer. And yeah, I'm not, pointing fingers at the teachers. I think you're right. It's the system that they are working in is limiting the way they can do their jobs in the way that we're talking about. Can we just lean into goal setting a little bit? I mean, if only there was a digital platform that combined wellbeing check-in and values-based
amazing.
Have you ever heard of youHQ?
Well, I have heard of youHQ, and it's all been like 100 out of 100 feedback. That's what I've heard.
Well, I think we don't normally. I'll get told off because we're not directly selling. But the interesting thing from a youHQ perspective, I think, is a lot of the conversations we have is around wellbeing and tracking and mood and emotion, which obviously we've talked a bit about. But the original conception of John and the work that he was doing, and again, a lot of it does come from sport and high-level golf and all that kind of stuff, is that goal-setting bit. And you never really hear a highly successful person say they didn't set goals. Is this something you love? Do you really love the science behind goals? And you talked about intrinsic motivation, and we call it values. It's the same sort of thing, right? What really motivates you from within? Yeah. What I'd like to hear a bit more about you and your journey through that. And I'd also like to be selfish and talk to you about yourself as a sports person, you're a marathon runner. I've got a marathon coming up in April. Basically, I want a full training program from you by then. No problem. But no, going back to the goal setting bit, I'd like to hear a bit more about your thoughts on that and how we get staff and students to buy into that side of things a bit more. Yeah.
So part of the reason why I believe goals are so important is because they've impacted me personally in a range of different ways. But one of the elements to setting goals is that we are going to hit barriers, and we need to ourselves be able to build on the strategies that we've already found for ourselves. And why I'm passionate about that is because when I was in school, I was a bit of a pain in the backside. I was lazy. I wasn't rude or particularly naughty, but I was pretty lazy. And in school and academically, my goal was to survive, and in our day and age was to get a C, apart from in PE where I wanted to get an A because that was my driver. Outside of school, I played a lot of sport. I was becoming a better and better runner. And I knew exactly what my goals were, how fast I wanted to run, what races I was going to run, where my training was, what my coach expected of me. I didn't use any of that great skill set. If I was beaten on that week, then I changed my goals, or I reflected on what I'd done the week before. Yet in education, because I felt like I wasn't good at it, and by the way, I wasn't putting the effort in I needed to, but I felt like I wasn't good at it. I didn't look for that. I looked for the easy option, which was to be the slightly silly, immature boy who could get by and probably scrape some C's without doing lots of work. So I'm driven by the fact that not only setting goals and challenging ones means we will face barriers, and we need to work out where else have we overcome those to help us on that journey. So it's no good a child saying, oh, I'm rubbish at maths, or I'm rubbish. And we get that. And that's how I felt. Actually, you need to unpick it. Which bit of maths is difficult? What's the challenge? What things have you tried to overcome that? Are you speaking to your teacher? Have you done extra homework? Have you been online? You straight away start to build those strategies and go, well, actually, I've tried lots of these things. It's still a real challenge, but I'm not letting it get me down. I'm not thinking I'm rubbish at that. I'm not being negative towards myself. I'm thinking, what's my next strategy? I want to achieve this goal. I want to get a 7 or an 8 in maths as it is now. How am I going to do that? I'm not going to give up. So for me, goal setting in that respect, if only I'd used the skill set I had in something I loved and was intrinsically driven and motivated to do, if I'd used 50% of that to be a bit more motivated and have a bit of intrinsic drive to succeed, it would have helped me in a range of ways. So I believe if we can speak to children and get them to give us a really challenging goal. And in a secondary school, that's the first thing I would do when they come in year 7 and we do that meet and greet piece. What's your goal? What would you love to be? Or it doesn't have to be exact, but what do you want to be? Share that and use that to leverage goals. Use that to leverage those conversations. Because if we do that and the child firstly feels like there's someone listening to them and someone they're having that conversation with, but also owns that journey, then I think we're considerably more likely to achieve that. And if I flip that from when I was that age right through to the middle of COVID, when I started working with Mindspan and a peak performance program, which is around positive psychology, they're part of the work and the organization we do. And we have a student version of that. I set gigantic goals around moving out of my rented property because I realized I was paying someone else's mortgage. I wanted to feel like I could be happy in a relationship because I hadn't been in that scenario. I wanted to run a fast marathon, so I needed to train harder. And I wanted to refocus my career journey and do something different because I was in an organization that I was struggling to align with. They're gigantic goals, but at 40, whatever I was, 4, 5, whatever it was, whenever COVID finished, I built the skill set to be able to start working those goals through and take them step by step. The last piece, because you're bound to want to say something, because I know you will. The last piece, one of the things people are scared about around goal setting is children, particularly. I'm getting 4s in maths at the moment, and the teacher's telling me I have to get 8, or I should be getting 8, or I would like to get 8. That seems like a really long journey. That's where we have to break it down, have a weekly or a fortnightly conversation. I'm a 4 now. How do I move to 4.2, 4.3? What can I do in the next half term that gets me to a 4.5? Wow, I would have made awesome progress. That's a really important part. Just like if you're going to say, I'm going to run a marathon, if at the moment the furthest you've run is 10K, that's a long journey. If someone says, well, I've already done a half marathon, it's a shorter journey. So we change the goals and the timeline and what that looks like every fortnight. So again, it goes back. I like the word forensic. It's about being really precise, really clear, and how that aligns to your ultimate goal.
I think we will have to do another chat about goal setting because it's just bringing up so many things that I have in my head. For example, when I first started using youHQ in pilot mode when I was teaching, and that was with year 7s and year 8s, the go-to is always get this grade in maths, get a 7 in maths, get a 6 in maths.
Yeah.
Worthy goal, great goal. But again, we're sort of leaning back into the problem with the outcome-focused UK system, aren't we? That it's all focused on the grade. And then we've got outcome versus process goals, haven't we? And then we've got long-term, like you said, and the short-term goals. So there's so much we can talk about. And it sounds like that kind of smart, specific, measurable, really forensic model is the model. I was going to ask, what do you do with the student that just goes, I don't know, because you do get those students, don't you? Well, let's try and think about what you enjoy. What do you have any sort of quick advice? If teachers are, whether they're working with you, whether they like doing this, whether they're working with us, they get a student that just goes, I don't know what goals to set and I don't know what my values are and I don't know what motivates me. And they're just a student that's going, meh. Where do you start with that student?
So it's a really good point. So with the mini mind program that we've designed is a piece around positive psychology to work particularly with year 5, 6s, but could be a great transition piece as well, is actually to get children to reflect on where their strengths are, where they work hard, where they find their barriers, but also to do a kind of anyone who's been involved in coaching, you know, there's like life audits, there's different things you can do. And what we've designed is one specifically for the children to think about. It could be about their health and sleep. It could be about relationships, communications, conversations, but actually just to start unpicking themselves, for them to scale score and see where maybe, oh, actually, you know what? I'm not super confident in groups. So that would be a really good goal. It's not about, like you say, Jez, it's not that, oh, I need to get 24 out of 25 in that maths test. I need to not sit next to Jez in English because I get told off. It's actually, you know what? If I could improve my confidence when I work in teams of people, that would be really a purposeful goal and will help all of my academic journey. So I think part of the work is to do that kind of audit at the start of them, and we would do the same with the teachers. We do a kind of competency inventory, it's called, and actually it's really surprising. Most teachers are really high on the empathy part of the scale we use, and are much less well scored on the bit around purpose and clarity, as in, where am I going, what am I doing? Really interesting. Whenever I work with schools, it's similar. So I think that's, for me, would be a really good starting point to do some kind of soft audit about them as a person. I think if we dive in at subjects, they will just go, I'm good at PE, I'm good at drama, I'm rubbish at science, I'm good at English, I'm rubbish at geography, I hate history. And yeah, we probably want to get there 6 months down the line to start unpicking what that journey looks like for them. So I think that would be my best advice, something around some kind of personal audit.
That's so good. Right, we're going to move on because, like I said, we could talk about this for absolutely ages. And by the way, if you're listening, watching, Kevin is a serious runner. So when he says he's a quick marathon runner, we're talking 2.5 hour. About 2.5 hours, was it?
2:35, yeah.
That's disgusting.
2:35.
And if you do park run or anything like that, we're talking sub 20-minute 5Ks the whole way through, right? For that time.
Yeah. So a bit quicker than that actually. So yeah, 18-minute 5Ks.
It's ridiculous. So yeah, again, at some point, so I plugged all mine into one of these apps and I put my 20-minute 5K time in, and it said 3:07 to 3:17. If I get that, I'll be well chuffed. So yeah, we'll talk about marathons another time.
Definitely.
We did have some preloaded thoughts and questions from a really interesting range of different people, former teachers, social workers, professors in education. So if Sophie can load that up, and we'll have a look at them. Here we go. So here's the first question. So, okay, this is from Ben. I love music, always wanted more of this type of lesson to support my drumming and well-being. How can schools work with the passions of individual students to promote this better? What do you think?
Love this. I mean, it's a really fab question, because, you know, we want children to be empowered by their learning. We want to grow a love of learning. Now, everyone likes and prefers different kind of things, different subjects, and I think cultivating some kind of sense of ownership is really important in that. So actually, we want them to have some initiative and innovate themselves and maybe shape their own learning. And for me, having that opportunity in some kind of theme, inquiry based, a big question where they can produce the present, you know, the final piece of work can be presented in a way that suits them most. That really empowers those young people. So let's say it's music. So that, you know, we're doing a piece of work it could be about sustainability in the environment. Let's pick something that most schools will do. Actually, writing a piece of music that incorporates the learning that's happened is going to help that student be way more engaged, be really intrinsically motivated, use a skill set they're really passionate about, and enable them hopefully to actually learn even better because they've been excited about their learning. On the flip side of that, when we create these opportunities, one of the things to ensure that children don't do is just do music. So if it was Ben, every time, every presentation, it's always music, right? Actually, we still need to improve Ben's skills about maybe presenting from a PowerPoint, or it might be writing a bigger article. That's, you know, we want to make sure the broader skill set across all of the subjects are used. But actually, if there's a real passion for something, let's personalize it. Let's create a tailored, personalized pathway that enables them to lean on what they are most passionate about. Because I don't care if a child loves drama, loves English, loves geography. Once they have a love for a subject and learning, I believe that helps them stay on track. Now, I gave my own personal story of me being, achieving averagely at school. But if it wasn't for PE and having a real focus and actually not wanting to be naughty in school, wanting to compete for the school, wanting to make my PE teacher proud, he's still a really good friend of mine. And I always say to him, I wouldn't be where I was if it wasn't for him. If we don't allow children to have that hook into the system, then there is a risk that they just opt out. And I think that's something that we should be addressing in the national curriculum.
Great answer. Can we go to the next one, Sophie? Here we go. So the next one is, often wonder why schools usually work in such a rigid and inflexible way when post-16 settings manage perfectly well, deviating from what usually happens to learners up to age 16. So that's a really interesting point, isn't it? So Alistair, thank you for that. Is there a fear of failure that stops this empowered way of exploration in the majority of school settings? So basically what Alistair's saying is, potentially younger down, it's strict, it's stringent, it's prescribed, you've got to follow the rules, you've got to do the certain subjects, but then obviously you get to post 16 and you get that choice to explore the things you're passionate around, just like you were saying with the one before and the drumming. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I think what happens, well, actually, fear of failure, we could use that from a multi-academy trust, a school setting, the younger children and the children going through, moving into their careers. It's scary, isn't it, to think about being seen as a failure when there's such high expectations. It doesn't, even if children don't watch the news, I mean, with social media, they know what what's talked about. They know what good is supposed to look like. And at this moment in time, that's all academic. So I think that fear of failure actually drives children away from the system and actually achieving more. And it drives schools to be much more structured and boxy about what they offer, rather than creating something fluid and that might engage the wider children. So I think teaching and learning in schools, we know that schools can't outperform the quality of teachers, what happens in the classroom, but there is more than one way to do that. There's opportunities we can create that allow children and staff and schools to flourish rather than be squashed by the system. But I would agree that a fear of failure, whether that be Ofsted coming in, outcomes being shared, SATs results, whatever it, progress 8 scores, or an individual just thinking I'm not going to get a good grade, so I'm just going to step away from that. I think that really does make a big difference to what happens in schools.
And it feels, I'm just thinking with my teacher hat on as you're talking as well, there's those pinch points, isn't there? So you lead these students into their GCSEs and you're going to be judged by, this is how I felt. I'm going to be judged at the end of the day on that number on that piece of paper. But it so shouldn't be the way. You've talked about so many things. And for me, I always look back, and when I do talks now, I did one recently, I've got this great picture of a student that I still speak to now who's gone on to, actually, she's left uni, she's gone to be really successful in business. And I remember laughing with her about her grade because she almost didn't deserve the number, because we had such fun teaching GCSE and A-level PE. And I remember there's a photo of us actually looking at the number and laughing at it. But that's what almost sums it up for me. It's the relationship that we built rather than the number at the end, even though she did well. Look, I think we're going to have to wrap it up, Kevin. I knew this was going to be the way. There's so much more to ask you. A lot of it is selfish. How do I go self-proud? But can you just tell people that are listening, this has really genuinely really inspired me. Like, it's even made me want to go back. I've never wanted to go back in the classroom or back in the schools, not for the last couple of years, but it makes me feel really hopeful that there is a way of doing this brilliant work, which we both believe in really passionately. Where do people find out a bit more about you, Global Spirit Ed? People that want to reach out, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so we have a website which is going along the bottom there, and what's really exciting about that is it's going to be brand new and updated from Monday. So please look at it now, but Monday it's going to look even better. So I'm really excited about that. There's information there about our philosophy, but also the programs that we offer. So how we work is we work on something called Positive Pathways, which is everything I've spoken about with the staff and the coaching model, and being really appreciative. There's nothing top down. It's we work together together. There's personalized pathways, which unsurprisingly is working with the young people and personalizing their experience with some coaching aligned to that. And we've got an important piece now around the head teacher. We've called it Calm Head, an opportunity to do some coaching work with head teachers who actually can come and create their own personal plan around how they focus on their well-being, because we know head teachers, what a tough job that is. You know, it can be a really lonely job. So working with Mindspan and doing that piece of work, that's we're really excited about that opportunity to develop that and work with them coaching. So LinkedIn and our website are the key areas, and it gives quite a bit of detail, and within those spaces any contact details that you would need for me are all there as well. So be great to speak to anyone that hears this webinar. The website's mine, the webinar is this.
Brilliant, Kevin. Thank you so much. It's been a genuine pleasure. And again, I feel like we could do 3 or 4 different versions of this, going off onto goal setting and to a little bit more detail. I've just seen a comment on me dancing. Honestly, guys, you don't want to see that, because it will blow your socks off. You also mentioned me being naughty at least 2 or 3 times. So you've obviously got to know me really well, Kevin, in a short space of time. Kevin, brilliant stuff. Really look forward to talking to you more. Thank you all for checking us out. And you can listen back on Spotify. You might have listened to it live, or you can go back on YouTube. But Kevin, for now, thanks very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Jez.
Take care, mate. Bye.
Bye-bye.